Thank you. Good evening. This is the Auburn Finance Committee. Today is Wednesday, March 27th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting is to be held as a hybrid of both in-person and remote participation option according to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 22. Let me just read that off the script. So this open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, the phone number is 1-786-535-3211, utilizing an access code of 991-599-357. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. All of our members tonight are present. Let me just do a quick roll call. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ed Coleman.
Here.
Patrick Jones.
Here.
George Graham.
Here.
And Stephen Consilio.
Here.
Town officials and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Town manager Ed Kazanovich.
Present.
CFO, town accountant Karen Harnoy.
Here.
And administrative assistant Sharon Kwiatkowski.
Here.
Thank you. Tonight's agenda, we'll have our call to order, which we just have done. We'll go over FY25 budgets for the Department of Developmental Inspectional Services, the Solid Waste Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Department of Public Works. And we have a couple of transfers, and if no one has any, we have some minutes to accept into some other transfers that were done administratively. We'll discuss that when we get to it, but does anyone have any problem this evening? We have one transfer request from the library director, and as opposed to making her sit through the entire DDIS and DPW budgets, which can be lengthy. Anybody have any objection to taking that out of order? No. Okay. Jean, do you want to come up and explain what this transfer is?
Good evening. So my request is to transfer $3,000 to our building and grounds account. We had some additional costs for our doors, which continue to sort of plague us. Just to give you an example, in FY23, we spent $3,400 on the doors, on the automatic doors of the outside. And this year, so far, $350 in addition to the $1,800 that we have to pay for the last service call. So I'm thinking that next capital account, we're going to have to really take a good look at the doors. So for now, I'm asking, the current invoice that we have is for $1,821.20. And we also have an issue in the children's room with the radiator. We took a look at it, we've been watching it, and DPW is not able to locate the source, so I'm going to have to call the plumber to come in, and hopefully that's not going to be a big deal, but I wanted to put the funds there so we didn't have to come back for a transfer.
Okay, thank you. So the library is requesting from the Children's Resource Administrator account, the amount requested $3,000 going to the Building and Grounds account. Reason given, service call from the door company for problems with the outside sliding doors, and also anticipated cost for plumbing services due to a leak on the radiator in the children's room. Current balance, I believe, and that's the Building and Grounds account, is a whopping 8 cents. So they're looking for $3,000. Do you have a motion on this one? A motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll get, do you want to just do the other transfer while we're on transfers, and then, this is one? This is from the DPW highway, coming from the traffic paint account. Amount requested, $1,000, going to protective clothing. Reason given, DPW has 4 new employees that need protective clothing. Any questions on this one?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so first budget being DDI, Department of Developmental and Inspectional Services. Darlene Quill, do you want to try and join us somewhere up here? We can make some room and fit you in if.
Just sit here, Dominic.
You could switch. You want to switch? I'm good. This is okay.
Just for reference anyhow, so.
Push over. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. So we'll probably do it in segments. I think that's how we typically have.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Sure.
So we'll start with, unless you want to just do an overview, or do you want to do it segment by segment? So.
Whatever the board's pleasure is.
I think we typically do yours department by department.
Sure,
Start with,
sounds great.
Public health, do you want to give us an overview of the public health budget?
Sure, yep. For the health budget, we do not have many changes this year. We are trying to focus this year on some training needs. The state has a initiative to get some training across the board, and this is part of the last several years where, since COVID, there's been a lot of changes in health and personnel, so there's been an effort to kind of standardize training. So we actively are working on training now to try to utilize the remaining funds in our budget for FY '24. And we are continuing to look for some free trainings. Fortunately, because the state is recommending these, a lot of them are free. So we'll continue to do that. You want me to continue unless it?
Any questions? Do you want to do it by department? Any questions relative to the public health?
On the board salaries, is there a secretary? Is that what that is, to cover the minutes and so forth for their board?
Yes, thank you. So the board salaries, that is salaries for the board members. So we have a 3-member board, and they have, they've always had a stipend.
Can you remind me if they're appointed or elected boards?
They are appointed. Yes. Yeah, and it's 3-year terms.
How do we typically, do we usually do department by department recommendations, or do we,
It's the bottom line.
it's the total?
Yeah.
Bond, okay. Any additional questions on public health? Next one is the planning section.
Thank you. So the planning, there are just not many changes to planning. We do have the planner is available to provide support to our economic development and energy manager. So we do divide the tax levy and uni-ag stipend for the salary. That's the note at the bottom. Do you have any questions on?
Any questions specific to the planning? Darlene, overall, I mean, I think several years back, retention was an issue relative to some of these specialties. Obviously, this is a tight year. I mean, are we still in a good spot? I mean, have those sort of issues stabilized a bit with personnel?
So, thank you for the question. And overall, we do have challenges within the department. As I can kind of give like an overview at the end for some of the things that we are concerned about, but we do have some staffing challenges right now, and we are, over the past several years, we are trying to get salaries up and trying to find ways to make that work using some of these available funds. For planning, obviously the Muni Ag Fund, and for health, we're looking at possibilities because of the push for opioid planning. and some of the funds that are coming into the state for that. So we're exploring options that way. Building, I think we're coming up on building. We do have some staffing changes that have occurred recently, so that's going to affect that budget. So, yes, to your question, we do have to keep a close eye on that, and we're presenting this budget this evening. But overall, hopefully, I can bring to the board if there's, changes that we're expecting in coming months.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add a few comments? So, to answer your question, we've made a number of adjustments over the last several years to try to keep our employees. We train them well, and to lose them to another community really sets us back. We seem to keep chasing the bar. For instance, we lost our building commissioner recently to a budding town, which creates we promoted Gary, who has to pass his certifications. He's had all of the training, but just has to do the testing. But that creates a vacancy in the inspector's position, and these positions are highly sought. So in some cases, the level of compensation that's budgeted is not adequate enough to attract a experienced inspector. We're going through that now. We have an application out. We have a number of interested candidates. But in a situation like that, we don't know if we have to provide more flexibility in addressing that need as a result of the vacancy. There are vacancies all across the Commonwealth, and they're having a difficult time filling these positions. So in some cases, it requires an adjustment to the salary account. So that's something I think Darlene is, I guess she's focused on that. I think she wants to identify that as a potential issue. But certainly, as these things become known, we'll do our best to keep you plugged in.
Any questions for that, or?
Do we ever borrow someone's inspector, or is there a regional service that can fill in?
So we do have a backup inspector that we have utilized in the past. So the two roles that we would have in building and code are the commissioner and then the local inspector's position. When in very rare forms, when they're both not available, we do have a backup inspector from another town that fills it.
Actual relationship in that backup inspector, or is it?
It's like a mutual agreement, so there's some reciprocity there. So if we borrow from one community and they may need an inspector, we'll lend out our inspector to them.
I just have a question, sort of on the follow-up of that. I was going to ask about the regional when we get into a pinch, but, worst case scenario, are there private vendors out there that have these certifications that we could, I'm not suggesting that we go that route, and I like our town employees who know the town and know the community, but, if there's buildings that need to move forward, we don't want projects stalling. Are there private entities out there in a pinch? If we couldn't, the regional options, could we contract out? I'm just think of things that we may see as a cost in the future, relative to contracted services.
Yeah, I think that it's a great point to bring up. For the focus of what needs to happen for inspections, my experience has been that it really is a niche that it's a small pool of candidates for what the inspectors are doing out in the field. There are some private companies. We have not explored that seriously yet, but it is something that we have on the table from the ad that Ed is talking about. We have the ad out for the local inspector position, and we've already had a number of candidates. So we're looking to move on that quickly. But, we definitely want to keep aware, because we can't, this is a very busy town, and we don't want, fall behind.
Thank you.
Is the inspector full-time or part-time?
Full-time, both full-time positions.
So would it be advantageous to have multiple part-timers? Since, a lot of times the inspectors are retired contractors. They might not want a full-time job, but they would certainly have the chops to do it.
I think what makes that problematic is sometimes you need an inspector immediately, and if you had someone scheduled on various hours, sometimes that could be problematic. Not only that, but our level of activity really warrants two full-time positions, and it's only getting worse. We have Eastland Partners, a 325-unit development being constructed that's going to require around-the-clock inspections by our local inspector, sign off by our building inspector. We have other affordable projects that, housing projects that are being considered, not to mention just the day-to-day stuff, the decks, the additions, the this, the that. So our numbers show that we're extremely busy. So there's no doubt in my mind that we couldn't survive without two full-time inspectors.
Well, I wasn't suggesting cutting hours, but as a way to supplement.
I understand, but I think that offers us less flexibility when you do it that way versus the full-time inspector.
And if I can just add to that, one of the significant changes over the past several years is the codes are changing. So for energy efficiency code requirements, those are becoming more and more. So more people are going solar. That has been a big draw, and our applications and reviews for that have increased rapidly over the past several years. So I know we're not at the code budget, but you will see, we did propose a plan reviewer for part-time, somebody that would have the flexibility to take some of the administrative heaviness off of the building department. And that, unfortunately, I think at this time, the way that, the budget is tight, it can't be considered right now. But our hope is, as development, moves forward, possibly that's something that we can look at in the fall. I think when the 40B project that is going on right now on Albert Street, there may be some opportunities of what they offered the town when they first came. They understood that, putting up all those buildings kind of close together, we're going to, increase the need for inspections, and having an inspector out there just really kind of focus on that. So that's being looked at as well. But certainly being able to address the plans, applications, paperwork part of it, so that, the inspector can be out in the field and not be bogged down with that. That's really, something that is needed and has been identified. And, certainly town administration is trying to figure out a way to help us. So just want to let you know that is something that is a need in the department.
So you raised a point that, if I'm reading this correctly on line 3, 5111.8, 5111.8, that 62 just represents one inspector, but I'm hearing that you'd like two.
I'm sorry, are you on the building budget?
I'm on public health. Did I drop a page?
Oh, I'm,
Different department, division.
Did we move on from public health? Did I?
We did. We did. We're going to
did.
take them all as one,
I
one recommendation.
apologize.
That's
I didn't
okay.
realize we moved on to planning.
oh, I'm sorry. The discussion
Right.
The discussion came up for building, so I'm sorry, I was just trying to answer
So
the,
were we on planning or are we on building?
We're about to move on from planning. If there's no additional questions, move on to
We moved on to
The
building.
building is after
On to-
economic development, the next one.
economic development now, energy.
And that's the local inspector salary there. That's what we're talking about.
Correct.
And that's to house two people?
is your question pertaining to the building budget?
Yes.
Okay, so on the building budget, you'll see there's the commissioner line, there's clerical, and then there is a part-time plan review engineer. And that is,
That was
that's what I was.
requested but not recommended. And then you'll see the local inspector after that.
Right, so I think where we're miscommunicating is, I thought in any one of these departments, I thought we referred to 2 inspectors, and now I'm just clarifying if we're really referring to 1 in each of the divisions, or?
No, under building, the building commissioner does inspections as well.
Oh, okay, so okay, so part of his job is to inspect.
Yes.
And then there's enough work that we need also a second local inspector.
Yes, and we've always had
Right.
those 2 positions.
Why don't we just go back to energy management, economic development? Do you want to just touch on that?
Sure. So this department, so the role for economic development coordinator and energy manager, that is a increase in salary this year. There's been a lot of progress that has been made in the past year, and there's quite a lot involved with the energy management requirements and reporting for the state. So there's data that has to be collected from all of the departments regarding usage of whether it be oil, gas, any of the fleet, any vehicles that are electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, all that has to be collected and reported to the state. Those reports also play into our green community requirements, which Auburn has been for over 10 years. And our staff member also represents us in the community for the Business Roundtable, DCG, helping to promote business and trying to make it easier for people to come to town to open business here. So the past year has been very successful, and that's why I'm recommending an increase for her. Other than that, there's really not a heavy budget need for that. There are meetings that she attends, but really not, it's really the person doing the work.
And if I may add, I think Brooke does a fantastic job on both ends, on the economic development and energy manager. But due to her efforts, the town has secured about $2 million worth of green community funding over that period of time. In addition to that, we probably have about $200,000 in muni ag funds that we get as a result of putting an adder on our town's electric bills to our residents. And that adder allows us to continue to focus on being more energy efficient and to save the town money in the long run.
While you bring up that account, can you just explain the muni ag account? What exactly? Because
So
salaries are.
as a result of the town passing a muni ag through a vote of the Board of Selectmen, it allows us to put an adder if we want on the electric bill. It's a fraction of a cent that gets added to that can only be used, reserved and used for making the town more efficient in terms of energy usage. And that's part of Brooke's role. We have to show that we're actually, through reporting to the state, reducing our carbon footprint and reducing our dependency on energy, making us more efficient. So she's done a fantastic job, and I just want to throw that out there. She's been a valuable asset to Darlene and her department.
And I'm sorry.
Sorry. Somebody online had asked if the aggregate rate is different from what the town pays. Like, do we have a different, does the town, because I was on the energy committee, which
Yeah.
I could ask why we dissolved, but the the aggregate rate would get redone periodically. Now we're on a 2-year rate.
Yeah.
But does the town go along with the aggregate rate?
No, because our energy consumption and usage is different than the residential homeowner. So we go out, I think we have a contract over a 5-year period. I can tell you the Muni ag rate is substantially less than the N-Grid rate, which our residents have an option to contract with. And they can jump in and out, so they're going to go with the most attractive rate. So I know under the old rate, we were paying about 23 cents, the Muni ag rate, and the N-Grid rate was about 32 cents a kilowatt hour. So it was a substantial difference. But our businesses can jump on the Muni ag rate, although in some cases, because of their usage, they go out for their own contract.
So we're doing a 5-year rate, and this is a,
It all depends. It all depends on the pricing. It all depends on projections. That's something that both Brooke and I and Darlene consider when those renewals come up. So normally we consider those type of agreements well in advance of the expiration, because we can do a blend and extend if we want. But we've been successful in keeping that rate down, despite the fact there have been some substantial and significant increases, as we can all see as homeowners over the past several years. So it can be a volatile market. So we've been successful.
And just to add to that, the Muni Ag agreement right now, I believe goes till 2025. And then the rate, should people choose to be on it, is 14.6 cents per kilowatt. So,
very good rate right now.
Yeah.
yeah, we're fortunate that, I think it's all market-based, so it's like trying to get at the right time and being able to act quickly. Brooke is very, she pays attention, and, you give her an assignment, she's going to do it well. So I think the other part of that too, I mean, it's, we put it in, I think it's been 2 years now, but our town hall has the charging stations, and we're trying to build our fleet for electric vehicles. The state has given us, incentives through grant money, from several years ago. So being able to secure those vehicles, that was a challenge in itself, just because there wasn't a lot of choices. But over the years, we've been able to get some electric vehicles, most recently for inspectional services. And now we're actually using, the charging station. The charging station, really, we kind of get a lot of foot traffic on it. So on the weekends, sometimes, if I stop by, I see people using it. So it really is a good thing. Being able to capture that, we don't, the amount of money that we make on it isn't significant, but we don't have to worry about our vehicles either. So we have the vehicles here, we can charge them up overnight, and it's really a good thing. And all those pieces, the Muni Ag, collecting all the data to put in the state system, being able to handle the charging stations and looking at overall, that's just the energy management piece. Economic development, I'm sure you saw how beautiful, the center of town was with our brand new, the flags that were put up on the brand new lights that we got through the state project, and DPW was, so helpful. So we were able to purchase that. It really kind of increases, why people would like to come to Auburn, making it attractive for businesses, making it pretty, making it homey and fancy, So she does all this, and she does a great job.
I just had a question relative to that position. I think I was here when the economic development position was created. I believe it was originally situated under your office, under the town manager's office, and then at some point combined. I wasn't completely in agreement with it at that time, because I felt like that was a full-time position that needed to drive economic development, because I feel like that drives, funds coming into the town. But, and then the energy end, it's obviously she's bringing in funds that way. Is there too much for that one person? Is that a position, and is that an office in the future that position is going to grow, or need to be separated again because of the amount of work that's involved there?
So we are concerned about, you're seeing a number of vacancies here in town. So we want to get those storefronts filled. I mean, that's just going to generate some growth and some revenue. So from that aspect, I think Brooke is beating the drums a lot. So she reaches out to the business community, tries to inquire about any interest in these properties. So she does a good job at doing that, and she stays plugged in to the chamber. We have a quarterly meeting with quarterly business roundtable meeting where we share information with local businesses and try to generate some interest in these vacancies. I think it's a reflection.
Has the committee ever thought to go out to the public, to the people that live here, and ask them what the services they'd like to see? Or does that not sound like it makes sense?
So I think that opportunity arises when the chamber meets, because I think the chamber is plugged in to the local community. I know we have done surveys through economic development to try to solicit some feedback from our residents as to what they would like to see for certain things. That's constantly ongoing. So, I think Brooke is doing what she can to try to gauge the desires of the community.
If I can also add, she does also coordinate, as you mentioned, we have an energy management committee and economic development committee, so she gets input. There's residents, obviously, on those committees, so she has that engagement as well. So it is something that.
I just don't know without, just calling it right out, that anyone's ever asked me if there are things I'd like to see. So I'm taking myself as a regular person who is a homeowner and a taxpayer. No one's ever said to me, gee, is there something you'd like to see here in Auburn?
Well, we are in the middle of renewing our housing production plan, where we did a townwide survey for the needs of the community. What do they want to see for housing needs? We had a series of public hearings that allowed our residents to participate. So there has been some outreach, and it addresses not only housing issues, but commercial development as well. So yes, that's been ongoing for the past year.
No, and in that regard, yes, I do feel like I participated. But I guess for me, I would just think that you'd maybe one or two, I'm just going to pull a rabbit out of a hat here and say that I think there's more restaurants than there are CPAs. There's very few entrepreneurial proprietorship types of environments that can offer an array of services. Like, I could think of an estate planner. I don't know, there's so much online right now that it's almost difficult to put something in brick and mortar. So it almost sounds like you're limited in that regard, and maybe we have to switch the brick and mortar as commercial back over to personal, and maybe not necessarily have it be business thrive, but just make use of garnering some kind of tax revenue off of it.
So if I may, so we have, since COVID, I myself have seen kind of a more of a switch, especially, you may not see these, but like internally, we have development coordinating group, which actually Brooke is in charge of. So that is like an informal internal group of town departments. When somebody is coming to town, whether it be like a business that wants to expand, somebody wants to come to town to do a business, or there's like an event happening, something fun, anything that is going to be happening that may impact the town departments. So it's a group that meets regularly. We meet every other Wednesday, so it's usually twice a month. And Brooke coordinates with, so whoever gets the call, it's usually our department or police or fire. Whoever gets the call first gets them funneled over to Brooke as the economic development coordinator. And then what she'll do is she'll set them up on DCG, and then, you know, we make some sort of contact with them. Geez, what's your event? I think an example like they had like a Easter egg hunt for one of the local churches. So that was going to be kind of a big event. Came through DCG. Turns out they were going to have some food trucks. So, you know, Board of Health weighs in on possible food permits. The fire department may weigh in and said, hey, you know, let's not put the food trucks, you know, in the fire lane, stuff like that internally. What I have seen over the past several years through DCG is there's a lot of home businesses. So people want to do that, you know, kind of, I guess your example, estate planning, or somebody that can do a business that's not going to, like, maybe they can do most of it online, but maybe they have one person come once in a while, so it's not a big traffic impact. So those are things that we are seeing, and because it's in inspectional services and because we're all connected, like physically and, you know, several times a day, we also get ideas from that of whether or not we need to consider zoning changes. Those things are happening as well. So I hope that helps you understand why.
It does, but I also, to my chair's point, think that part of the role of an economic developer is to attract people to sell the town, to get them to come in and want to. So that sort of sits on the other side of hearing the town manager say, well, we've noticed some vacant storefronts and we're thinking about how we're going to. So that was really more, you know, and I know that we've got a big plan and I know that we're meeting, but I think since it came up as part of the budget meeting, that it was an opportunity to sort of talk about it for a little while, because I think depending on who you are and where you're sitting, whether you're participating or the audience or a taxpayer or involved in the payroll of the town, you want to know that, you know, Auburn has the ability to still attract businesses and if not, move with that space to make sure that we're not losing taxpayer money.
If I may, I think this is a reflection of the times. I don't think Auburn is any different than any other community.
right.
Although, you know, I think our focus has been in addressing small businesses. We offer the small business exemption. We've worked diligently in compressing the dual tax rate to help entice businesses to come to Auburn, and we've seen some positive results of that. My comment about the storefronts, I mean, I think you could see that wherever you look. So,
You do.
you know, you're competing with Amazon, you're competing with
Sure, well, you're just competing with businesses that are, you know, finding just to have brick and mortar is expensive. And, you know, what can we do as a community to attract them so that people can get back into those places? Because at some point, I think we're going to learn that sometimes it merits having a real person in front of you and having those services provided for you. So I get it all. I just think it merited mentioning.
I think they're addressing bylaws now that will allow for mixed use in certain
Right.
sections of town that will help entice developers to not only focus on businesses, but housing as well. So I think that is going before the town meeting.
And I think one of the things that I want to point out that I've always liked about Auburn, but I've seen it in the surrounding communities for the decades that I've lived here, is the one thing I don't want to see is I don't want to see green taken up or a beautiful lawn in an area, regardless of whether it's commercial or, you know, in a residential zoned area, and have well, let's just be basic, and have a movie theater or a strip mall put up. And then 4 blocks down the street, 4 years later, they allow the same thing to happen. And now you've come up and everybody wants to go to the greatest. So now you've got this dinosaur of a vacant area. And I've never experienced that while I lived in Auburn. I've never seen it make choices where it allowed something to occur and then it didn't think that through, whether it be the planning board or zoning board of appeals or the economic developer, and say, hey, wait a minute, we've already got that. Why would we want to put another one 4 miles on the other side of town? If anything, there isn't enough market research to justify having two here. So that's the one point I will say, it's a delicate dance to do, you're right, to fill those spots, and a lot of people are up against them. But I'm glad to see that we didn't have two movie theaters collapse around us because a third one went up in Millbury or Grafton or something like that. So I know we're thinking about it, we're making wise choices.
Not to get us too far off track of the budget here, but maybe, since this is a committee that's got an economic interest at a minimum, if not a vested interest in that we're recommending budgets relative to taxpayer dollars, maybe we could consider having Brooke present to this committee once or twice a year, maybe following her findings at a chamber meeting or things of that nature to give us an idea, as opposed to coming all the way here on a Wednesday to approve two transfers. Maybe we do it in conjunction. She could make some, because people do, and maybe that's the forum by which she gets the information out to the public, where it's a televised public forum to talk. But people do have concerns over, mine is Simon Properties. Like, they're talking about closing 150 Macy's stores. I don't know if ours is one of them. Maybe Brooke has some insight as to whether we're there, so maybe she can give people a little peace of mind just through some information sharing. So that's just a thought. Certainly leave it to you folks to decide whether that's appropriate or to, have those discussions. But we'd love to. I've never met her. Sounds like she's doing a great job. Love to.
I'm glad to hear your excitement about it, and she is doing a lot with the mall. I can tell you our department, we're trying to promote the mall and some ideas that they have, some, different ideas, and we want the mall to succeed. So trying to take, the spaces, the parking lots, let's see what we can do. So that is something that is very active, and I would love to have Brooke come here and talk to you about.
I know Simon's been close to the vest. I know we were looking for sites for the public safety facility. They wouldn't show us any of their cards relative to their intention. So I don't know what their plan is down the road, but I'm glad we have people working with them.
Yeah, I thank you very much. I appreciate the support, and certainly as we move forward, if there is a need for more help in that department, I can hear that, you're supportive.
Any other questions relative to economic development, energy management?
No, just to clarify, the budget number is just the portion of the levy, and it's, there's, like you said, additional funding for that position, but it comes from another source?
Yes, correct.
Great, thank you.
I'll just add to that. I'm in the zoning bylaw review committee, and Brooke's been there a lot too, and she seems very on the ball, so I would agree. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, George.
Building and code enforcement.
Okay. Building, for the building budget, I think we've kind of touched upon some of the changes for this year. So as I mentioned, we do have a request for some additional help there with a part-time plan review engineer. Unfortunately, we did have our building commissioner left after nearly 10 years. However, I'm happy to tell you that we did promote internally. The local inspector did have a desire for that position, so he is working towards getting his final certifications in that role. So we have a conditional building commissioner that's getting up to speed. And as Ed mentioned, we do have the local position advertised. So we're hoping to fill that as soon as possible. There's really no other budget changes there. However, I do want to let you know, we are going through a major change right now with a lot going on in the department, but we are in the process of transitioning our existing permit software over to a new permit software. So right now, that to get us set to transition to the new software, we are putting in the new forms, trying to get the staff starting to train with the new system. So that is going to be happening over the next 3 months. So there's a lot that goes into it. We have to tie all of the address tables and database through the assessing department to make sure it matches the permit addresses within the software. So we're working through, that IT support, and we are going to switch over to that by June 30th. So that's going to be,
Software?
we're switching to OpenGov.
Is that an update to the existing or a new purchase?
We have an existing software, so it's People GIS, and we're switching over to OpenGov.
Can you just explain, so obviously you had a department request for a part-time position for plan review engineer. Typically, you know, we always hope that we get to the end of this process and there's something left, but we've been told that, you know, there's pennies
Yes.
basically at the end. How are you going to make up, obviously there's a need. How are you going to fulfill the need or accommodate the way you've always done? But
Unfortunately, the amount of permits that are coming in are only increasing. Over the past several years, they are increasing rapidly. And so that is identifying what I mentioned before, because the code changes under building have increased for solar requirements and energy. All of those things are now being incorporated into all the plan reviews. So this particular request was going to help both the building department and the fire department, because both departments have to do reviews for these type of applications. So we are going to do our best to try to keep up with it, but obviously it's a challenge.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know Darlene has identified this as a priority, and we see this as a priority as well. I think she alluded to the Eastland Partners project, where we identified some impact fees as a result of additional services required for at least her department to support that level of development via inspections and things, plan reviews, things of that nature. I reached out today to Eastland Partners to see when we could expect our first installment of those impact fees. Certainly, those impact fees were used for a variety of reasons, some road improvements in that general area, but also some additional support and admin services that are required of her department and other departments through town government. That being said, we may be able in the fall to recommend something from those impact fees that may help support a part-time position, at least to get us through a period of review and inspections as a result of those. So we may be back at a later date. It all depends on a number of things. Certainly, as we get into Joanna's budget, we stripped away some of the celebration fees in order to balance the budget that's before you tonight. So 4th of July is out, Memorial Day is out, special events is out. Small money, but very symbolic, but the board had suggested that we consider putting that back into the budget. So that's one area we're looking at too. This is another priority. But just to keep that on the radar screen, we may be back at a later date to address this need here, okay?
My question relative to funding, so you're one of the few departments, maybe you and well, I mean, I guess there are a couple other smaller ones, but you generate income through fees. So how does those fees just go right into the general fund?
Yes.
There's not retained where they can be utilized? It's not allowed? Okay.
Under certain circumstances, it is allowed. It all depends on DOR regs and guidelines, as Karen will tell you. But for the most part, that's general fund revenue is going to get recorded in the general fund.
But it's a balancing act, because if you've got contractors and people paying permitting fees, they expect those services not to hold up their projects. So it's tough that you're taking a fee in, and that you have to deliver those services professionally and in a reasonable amount of time. So I'm just trying to,
Right. So those fees over the past several years have increased, and the number of, the volume has increased, which is why, we're asking for that help. But also recognizing that, as Ed mentioned, in order for us to, start getting some of the fees in for the 40B, the impact fees, we actually have to get the buildings done, issue occupancy. So you can't issue the occupancy if you don't have the people here. So we're trying to prioritize making sure that things are operating, and I can tell you, Gary has his eye on that. So we are doing absolutely everything we can to keep it going, but this is something that, it will bring money into the town, but also there's a lot of review that goes with it. So we're, we are very thankful that, that administration will take a look at that in the fall. So we appreciate that.
I mean, I think I would be interesting. I don't know if the number is somewhere contained in this, in the budget here, but as to what we take in relative to your fees.
Well, if I may, we moved a conservative approach on our new growth from 400,000 to 700,000. That's been the average. So if we recognize some new growth as a result of Eastland Partners, may allow us some additional flexibility. I'm not going to know that number until September when DOR certifies those values. Fingers crossed, maybe that value will approach $1 million. That gives us $300,000 of additional consideration townwide. Not that we would suggest we want to appropriate that all, but it does offer some flexibility. But on the flip side, we have the governor's numbers. The House numbers could be worse. We may have to swing the other way. So we got to keep all that in mind, how it ultimately shakes out. But that's why it's too early to make a recommendation on this right now.
And to answer your question, just in regards to solar permits, 2021, we had 70. 2022, we have 132, so almost doubled. And 2023, 189. So that's the solar, just the solar. I'm just focusing on that.
Any other questions relative to building code enforcement? I think this is, okay, Conservation Commission.
Okay, just get to that. Conservation, there's really not a lot of changes.
Actually, a reduction.
And just to remind the board, this is something that I am excited just to tell you. We put the conservation agent, land use coordinator in place a year ago, actually January, and we are just, that has been such a great thing for our department. So we offset that with, this gets paid out of 3 budgets. So it's planning, zoning, conservation, and then the 4th piece is through the conservation fund, which comes in through the applications, so portion of those fees.
Which applications?
Conservation applications.
Anybody
Yep.
that has any impact on
Yep.
that? Okay.
RDAs and NOI applications.
Questions on conservation? Animal control. Last one for your,
So animal control, we have, our assistant animal control officers. We have spent a lot of time in the past year trying to get professional development for them and making sure that we have consistent backup for our full-time animal control officer. So that's about a 4% increase. Otherwise, really any of the operational budgets really haven't changed. We just moved money around a little bit to better serve the line items and what we're spending money on.
Point, through the chair, it has gone up and it's doubled. And it's gone almost 4 times in a couple of fiscal years. So I'm curious, what constitutes backup?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So for backup coverage, we have, this actually starting at 4 o'clock. So we've got our regular office hours for the town hall that the full-time animal control officer serves. And then the backup coverage starts at the end of the day. So it's 4 PM until the following 8 AM. So that person serves in the off hours. So that's one feature. And then we also have weekend coverage for starting at 1 o'clock on Friday, and that goes until, I believe it's Monday morning. If I can just add to that, this has really been something that the department, it has helped us tremendously. I can tell you, animal control is always on. We get calls all the time for any number of different, whether it's a loose dog, a barking dog, an animal in distress, a goose with something stuck around his neck in the pond, right up to the police calling animal control because there's a animal that's hit by a car in the road, or they've got a domestic situation and they've got a dangerous dog that they have to remove. This was all handled before by one person. So honestly, when I started, we didn't even have this position. Thank God that administration supported it. So over the years, we have tried to refine and improve the way we provide services. I'm very proud of what we offer to the town.
No, it is, and I need to hear that because we've gone from 70,000 to 95 in a very short period of time. And I think my bigger concern is I just wasn't aware that there would be the need for an increased amount of money to cover 4 to 7 AM the next day and the weekends, which makes me beg the question, what's going on after 5 and all weekend that we need all this additional help? But like you said, there's a lot more traffic. The animals are getting killed in the road. I mean, you're justifying it. I'm not questioning it, but I needed to hear that because it just was a 30% increase in a short period of time.
Even if there's limited activity in terms of calls, there may be dogs still housed in the kennel that need cleaning and care. So even if there's no pickups or whatever, they still have to go to the kennel and take care of what pets that we are housing there. I just want to say the ACO budget is really a 17% increase. The collective department is a.
No, I just meant that overall, if you look at fiscal year '21, we were at about $68,000.
Yeah.
And then if you shoot yourself over to the town manager's recommendation and you add $100, you're at 95. So for the purposes of just looking at the bold number across the animal control total, you've gone from just under 70 to over to 95,000. That's what I was, I'm looking at the whole department as a whole. And so half of 70,000 is 35,000, and you're getting there just in a couple of years. So it's my job to notice variations and trends and changes as they relate to a percentage. And so that just jumped right out at me. That's a significant increase in a short period of time.
What I do want to tell you, what you don't see here is this, and you'll see it under Article 3 as a funding source. There's a level of funding coming out of license fees.
Oh, okay.
As a result of a push to collect delinquent ones, that wasn't done in years past. So the technology allows us to track that and to go after those delinquents.
Amy's salaried, she's a salaried employee, so when she used to come out prior to these assistants, she was coming out 24/7.
Yes,
You're exactly
basically on
right.
her own time.
getting burnt out.
Burnt out,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
As a young lady, she was.
Right.
She was it, around the clock, the one animal control, so, these backup folks, I think, are,
They're vital, honestly. They really are. And honestly, the need has increased.
And it gives our ACO a quality of life that she never had before. I mean, you're on the clock all the time. So,
And I guess the one other thing that, I don't think I've mentioned it, but the other piece of this is that software that I mentioned earlier.
OpenGov?
The OpenGov, yep. So that software is for the building, building platform, but it also serves the town clerk, which the town clerk and the animal control officer work very closely together for dog licensing. That actually has already gone into effect. So as of January 1st, we have already started online dog licensing. One of the challenges over the past, I'm going to say year plus, year and a half, has been that the licensing, the platform that we had didn't allow for people to pay online. And so we lost a lot of money over the past couple of years. So already for 2024, we're already at almost 15,000. So that is one of the things that Amy has been in a very important role in that, working with the town clerk to be able to get those fees that Ed is talking about for the town.
And is it just a one-time year annual fee? Do we just charge all of them in January or something like that? Or
Yeah.
if you move and you come in at monthly residuals?
Oh, so it's a dog license fee.
Right,
So
so
you're
it's
going to
once a
pay,
year.
it's a yearly license fee. Yep. So you have a period of time, I think it goes until April, and then after April, you pay like a late fee. But that is something that we're hoping this new licensing platform allows us to get more money that Ed is referring to. So hopefully that helps you understand that this is an important position.
did I see somewhere there's a Friends of the Kennels group or something that helps support donations for, because I'm just noticing some of the support stuff, vet bills, food, stuff like, it seems minimal in these lines here. Is that because of the support of that outside groups, or?
dog friend, no, what's that group?
For friends.
For friends, yeah.
So we've had, we do get donations. Fur Friends is one of those organizations that does, that has offered donations to us, which we are very grateful. But yeah, we run very lean, as you can see, and we get grants from the state. We creatively try to, get donations where we can.
Thank you.
I noticed that there's no food for the kennel on this budget. So is that how the animals are getting fed? It's from outside support?
So we obviously take donations, but we do purchase, we do have kennel maintenance as a line item. So I think we have that as $700.
Doesn't seem like much.
That's why we run lean. So we definitely, we can't ask for donations, but we appreciate them.
Any other questions relative to DDIS? Okay, so without going through the total by totals, let's do the total for the entire department. So FY '24 was $784,855. This year, the department requested $862,680. Town manager's recommendation, $822,008. That is an increase of $37,158, or 4.73%.
Motion approved?
Recommend? We have a motion to recommend?
Second.
And a second, all in favor? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise.
So we have zoning Board of Appeals and solid waste.
Solid
Oh,
waste.
is solid waste next? Okay.
The one right before.
Solid waste is next? Okay. It's okay?
Go ahead, yeah. We
Okay.
have a couple new members, so I mean, I'm always need to be reminded about how this whole works, these contracts, so.
Yes, yes. So we've had a busy year for solid waste, and I'm happy to let you know that we have extended the existing solid waste contract. So we worked through the past year very closely on that, and we have a 2-year extension. So our solid waste contract will be good now until June of 2026. So on, how this is set up is we have the staffing up top, and then basically the majority of the budget is going to be for the solid waste collection or hauling, and then the solid waste disposal, and then like a small little portion for other, for miscellaneous. Solid Waste World is definitely over the past several years become very market-driven, and a lot of what we're seeing now, especially in the contract that we just negotiated, a lot of it is based on CPI, so Consumer Price Index. That is something that we really had to pay attention to. So we have, Casella has been our solid waste contractor, and the solid waste disposal, we are in a 20-year contract with Wheelabrator, which is now actually called WIN, Waste Innovations. The numbers that you see here are about a 4% increase for both, and it is a little bit challenging to try to budget for this. We tried to look at, in the past, in the past several years, what we have incurred for cost. And this, we feel, is something that will hopefully take us into the next year. But you never, you don't know exactly how much you're going to dispose of. The hauling contract is a little bit, I guess, more secure than the disposal contract, because you don't know how much you're going to be paying for, how much waste you're going to have in total. So the tonnage rate is set in March, so we actually don't have what the tonnage rate is going to be until April. But we are using what we've done in the past. And last year, it was about a 3% increase from the year before. So we were trying to be conservative and go with a 4% increase. We also look at the blue bag revenue for anything that doesn't fit in the cart. We have really watched that in recent years since COVID. A lot of people are home. There's more trash generated. So we definitely did a review with Ed and Karen this year for the indirect cost. And we really think that this is a good budget to present to you. But obviously, we're waiting for some of those numbers to come. They're set up the way that we have it in the contract for disposal. We actually don't get that rate until April.
Do we make any money on recycling? How does the recycling?
So in years past, there used to, in years past, we actually had a contract where we didn't even pay for recycling. And over the past several years, there has been some challenges and some changes in how recycling is processed. So we actually pay for recycling processing based on a formula and how the commodity, at what price the commodity is. So it's a formula that is calculated, and honestly, it changes from month to month. So recycling processing costs, depending on contamination level. So if people are recycling properly, we spend a lot of time, a lot of education to get that messaging out. We have a solid waste and recycling coordinator that literally is driving the streets every morning for several hours, God bless you.
Bless you.
And we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that people know what the right thing to do is. So recycling processing cost, bless you, cost about anywhere from about $6,000 on the low end to $11,000 a month.
A lot cheaper than the trash. Yeah.
So you really have to pay attention to what's happening in the world, and contamination seems to be a big deal. So we are spending time on the education piece. And then recently, I don't know if you saw, we did an effort, a swap initiative, so giving people incentive not to have to pay for a cart charge, to go from a large trash cart to a small trash cart. We did this really over the winter, and we got 180 people that we had. Honestly, I think I expected, geez, maybe we'll get 50, 60. Literally 180 people switched from large to small trash. So what we're hoping is in the next year, 2 years, we start to see less tonnage. So we're excited about that. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Questions? Could you just quickly explain, so homeowners pay their trash bill every half year? Is it half year for trash?
Twice a year.
Twice a year. So when they see a number in a budget as this, that the money's there, that bill is going, how does that work, the money behind it?
So when we renewed the contract, we asked the board to consider a fee increase to cover not only direct costs, but indirect costs as well. And we didn't want to come back every year. We did a model where we projected out expenditures over the life of the contract that allow us just to do a one-time adjustment. In consideration of that, we offered the program of the swap, where people had an opportunity at no cost to them. In fact, they got a credit. The swap was free, and then they got a one-time credit of $50 to incentivize them to downsize and to reduce our tonnage at the wheel. That would result in savings as well. That's a benefit to the community, not only for the residents, but for us as well. But no, that fee goes into the general fund in anticipation of expenditures that have been identified.
Any other questions? Solid waste, FY '24, 1.433694. Department requested 1,428,332, which is also the town manager's recommendation. We have a motion?
Second.
And a second, all in favor? Very good. And I use ZBA as well?
ZBA. So the ZBA budget, the zoning board of appeals, really no changes. Should be an easy one.
176.
176.
The
Right after DDIS.
The main part of this budget is just 1/4 of the salary that's split up from the conservation land use coordinator I mentioned earlier.
Thank you. So FY '24, $14,472. Department's request this year, $14,579. That matches the town manager's recommendation, a slight increase of $106.78.
Recommend.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor? Very good.
Thank you very much.
Any capital in yours? No capital in yours?
We have the 2028.
Well, there is something on the radar screen, but nothing for the year that you are taking a position.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
We're good? We're good. Okay. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Charlie.
Good luck with Open Gov.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones will explain his that sidebar. Yes, now you wish to Laura? Joanna, how are you? Set the standard now, you get right up to the corner, just please don't back up quickly, because
Oh, no, don't.
Okay. I just want to.
I think we're good. Darlene made it.
Darlene's shifting over there.
Yeah, you're right up there.
Get close.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, come around the corner.
yeah, that's good.
So, good evening. So you've also got several divisions within your department. Do you want to give us, do you want to go division by division? Do you want to give us an overview, or however you'd like to present?
Well, I'll leave it up to the board. I can do an overall review or just go by division, however.
If your notes are broken up by division, we'll just do it by division. That's probably the easiest.
Sure.
Okay, great. So DPW, this is the engineering division. Cover engineering?
Sure. So we really don't have a lot of changes in that division. The biggest change is in the wages. In the past, so we just filled 2 vacancies in the stormwater and the engineering divisions. So in the past, one of the positions was filled partially by engineering and partially by stormwater. And at this time, we're just shifting that so that one person is funded through one account, the other person is funded through the other account, just so that it's a little bit easier to follow, and there's a specific account for each position. So if you looked at last fiscal year, we had an assistant town engineer in the stormwater section. So we're dropping that line and moving some funds over to the assistant town engineer in the engineering section. So so you have the 2 engineers in the engineering and the stormwater section that are being funded. I don't know if I.
Yeah, that was allocated in years past, and it really created an accounting nightmare. So we combined that in one line item.
The funding source at the noted at the bottom seems to be complicated enough without making it more complicated for the director's salary with all the different funds that are,
Yes.
that makes it complicated enough. Questions relative to the engineering department?
I'm just curious why the department request for sidewalks and pedestrian safety was requested at 150, but the town manager is, I see there were 50,000 appropriations for probably some work, but what the town manager's take is on not putting anything in there.
So if you look at the footnote, that has been provided for under the 5-year capital. That way, if it's not expended, we're allowed to carry that over and expend it in future years. It becomes problematic when it's part of the operational side of the budget and you have to expend it by June 30th.
Well, no, and
We didn't want to lose any of that. We wanted the ability to carry that over.
But you wouldn't be able to encumber the money as part of the operating budget and pull it forward and PO it as part of it?
I think you could do a reserve for encumbrance if you had a measurable liability as of June 30th.
But it would have had to have been billed before June 30th,
Yeah.
not purchased, not a purchase order to encumber it, but
I'll leave that up to the CFO to determine, but yes.
Right, if it was contracted for by the end of June, then we could carry it over.
well, that was my point of my question, but you don't want to run that risk.
Right.
So you're moving it right out to the CIP.
The selectmen identified that as a priority that they wanted to see, and we just had a sidewalk program study done through CMRPC that was covered through opera funds. So we want to use that program to initiate some repairs, some enhancements to our sidewalks. So we don't want to lose the ability We don't want that to
I
close.
had that in my head, but I didn't want to assume it. The notes weren't quite spelling it out, so I appreciate the clarification.
Welcome.
If I could add, if we have a larger project and if we have the ability to combine that money for, for a couple of years to fund that project, and gives us that flexibility.
Any other questions relative to engineering? Stormwater? And you covered a little bit on how we've moved things around, but anything else relative to stormwater you want to highlight?
We really didn't add any changes aside from the wages.
Has anything changed with stormwater? I know your predecessor, that was, he would highlight that on a regular basis, some stormwater regulations. Are we on track?
We are, at this time, we just hired, like I mentioned, we have 2 new engineers, and it's great because they both have 2 very specific, skill sets. And one of the engineers is very in tune with the stormwater permit, and she's keeping us on track, so.
Just for new members that may not have heard, Bill Coyle's stormwater, can you just give a condensed version of regulations that are there, relatively new regulations, is my understanding?
Sure. So, so the town had to apply for a permit to discharge into the United States waterways. So, so we received the permit, and that is a multi-year permit, and each year there's different sets of requirements that we need to meet. In the past, there was requirements on mapping and maintenance of the stormwater infrastructure. So in recent years, it's been a little bit more stringent on any, there's additional requirements because we have some impaired waterways due to phosphorus mainly. So at this point, we're looking at phosphorus reduction plans and looking at implementing some infrastructure that might filter that. So this will help to add those BMPs, those best management practices, so that we can meet those goals. So there's. The years past, we've had a lot of mapping and a lot of planning, and now we need to kind of move forward and do the physical infrastructure improvements, as well as there's a lot of calculations that go into it to prove that we're reducing those the phosphorus. We've also, as part of the permit, we've also implemented a permitting process for townwide for anybody that's looking to develop land. So there's a land disturbance permit. So that's also our department. So we're reviewing plans with respect to that, and that was a requirement for our what's called a MS4 permit. So that was part of it. Just kind of going back to the years past of some of the other requirements. And one of the other things is testing all of our outfalls to see if there's any illicit discharge, making sure that there's nobody's putting anything down the drains that doesn't belong there. So, so we're going to be looking at, we're going to be funding some of the testing as well.
Thank you. I mean, I know it's a complicated process that needs to be addressed, an expensive process, but that's why these positions are there and funded.
Yes, we're lucky to have this individual.
Okay. Any other stormwater questions? Okay. Highway.
So, with respect to highway, there's several slight increases that are related to building maintenance, protective clothing, training, as well as some price increases for materials due to market adjustments. And then the snow and ice budget, as stated in the budget kickoff meeting, was level funded.
Questions on highway? This is, one of the more expensive ones. Alice, just in general, staffing, retention, same, how is your department doing?
In highway, there was one individual that was very instrumental in keeping up with our facilities maintenance, actually foreman. He hired. We seem to be losing a lot of people to the south. They're moving down south, and we can't really compete with the weather.
A lot of them come back to.
I'm hoping. Would love to have them back.
Is any unfilled positions that you have, or?
At this point, it's the person that was actually.
South. Is that what you-
Okay.
That's a specialized position, so we're preparing a job description for that now. It's being reviewed, so.
Are you short-staffed on the 103 positions, where it says wages full-time? Are you down a person there? Or is that fully funded?
That is fully funded.
An additional was requested that we could not recommend.
That's the difference. That's the difference, okay. There was an additional, good, okay.
Any other questions on the highway?
Actually, I take that back. If we go to, I'm sorry, I think we talked about that. If you go to the next one, under facilities, the facilities manager was formerly under highway. And we did a reclassification.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was. I was thinking an additional may have been asked in parks, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
Is highway totaled out?
There's another pool, that's the seven.
That's the total. So that's what we should be taking a recommendation on, is the,
No,
it's on.
No, we have more divisions.
No, I understand. There's there's the big total. Okay, I see it now. Okay, if nothing else on highway, snow and ice pot? Go ahead.
I have one question, because, the perpetual complaints that people have about the roads. And I know a long time ago, there was a pecking order of conditions and sort of working through that list. So I guess the question is, how is that going generically? And the person that had posted something about how their road had gotten significantly worse quickly. And so the question they had was, do you bounce people around, or roads around on that list based on, worse springs than expected or whatever?
So, one thing is I've noticed that every spring the roads look worse once they're starting to thaw out, and then by summer they look a little bit better. Maybe because I'm used to it, but I'm not really sure. But overall, our roadway program has continued through the years. So every year we do drive each road and grade it from 1 to 5. 5 being the best, basically a newly paved road, 1 being deplorable. We do that just because it can't be static, because based on the subgrade material, even tree overhangs, more water, you have more water going onto the road, more shade, roads are going to deteriorate at a different rate. So, so we always revisit that every year. We might have an idea of, which road, what we might be focusing on, but we want to make sure that nothing's slipping through the cracks. So at this point, we have driven all the roads. We finished, I think, last week. So we're going to be going through that data and finalizing a list for the spring. And we already have we're able to continue our contract, extend our contract from last year. So, once we get that list ready, if the weather holds up, the contract will be ready to go as well.
Did you like the punch you used, nothing slipping through the cracks? Very clever.
I have a question to town administration while we're on this subject. We were talking earlier about, and it escapes me now because I'm trying desperately to recall it, but we were talking about a small percentage of, per something that the town gets an amount for, and I can't remember what the example was. We were on some expense and it generated income, but it was at a very small amount for every, well, I was trying to recall it, but on the same concept.
Like the electric, we're talking the muni.
Yeah, the electric, or, right, on the electric, thank you. So, now that I'm around town a little bit more, I've noticed that large companies like, and I'm sure this may have come up, I don't know, I'm reaching out to town management for this, but I notice in any given day, 50 trips a day by Amazon on my street, 50 trips a day by FedEx. Somebody in a company is paying $12 more to have something delivered at 8:10 instead of 9:10. Somebody's paying another $15 to have something delivered at 11 o'clock instead of 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But these miles are piling up on our roads. And the first problem we have to the board is that when you spend an exorbitant amount of money to redo your roads these days, they don't use the same product that they used even 25 years ago. So the life expectancy on those roads has already diminished. So we're paying a lot more money for product and wear and tear that we don't even get a return on like we used to. To add to that now, we've got companies that have these large trucks that are driving through our towns, on our roads, into our neighborhoods, and onto our streets. And I know at the end of the day, the consumer's going to pay for it, but if you want to pay for Amazon or DoorDash or somebody to deliver all of your stuff, is there any conversation about possibly tapping into their income and saying, look, if you're going to deliver to us or you're going to go up and down Johnson Street for 40 times, there's going to be, in other words, they're making out because they're charging for early delivery, but we're losing because they're going up and down our streets 40 times a day as a large truck and eating up our roads. And I'm only mentioning it because to me, I do see a significant wear and tear that didn't exist even 10 or 15 years ago.
I don't know of a mechanism that would allow for any such compensation for that, but what I would tell you is probably the method of delivery will change. A drone will bring it to your house pretty soon, and it won't be
Until someone
traveling
gets
over the
clipped off the
roads.
head.
So there'll be no wear and tear on your
There'll be
roads.
no wear and tear on the road. Just an
That
observation.
technology is not that far away, so.
No, but I think it's important to recognize in the budget process that there are two things that are happening. We're watching the expense of product rise, whether it's equipment or whatever we're using, and also we're watching the price of labor go up. So it's just no matter which department sits in front of us, it's labor and materials, and it's just exhausting to see this kind of money being poured. And like you said, to your point, which roads are next on the list? And then those other roads are waiting. And then by the time we get to those roads, the roads that we did 10 years ago are going to have to be done over. So it's a never ending.
Would you agree with his statement that the quality of the
Oh,
roads
it's
is
not a statement,
different?
it's a fact. It's a fact.
Because it seems to me you get what you pay for. I mean, highways are built differently than side streets. And
So I do want to stress that we do look for, if we're looking at, the main roads that usually get much more traffic, those roads are looked at more closely just so that we can catch them before we have to pulverize them. And if we can mill and overlay, so like, we do look at, maybe we don't spend that cost of pulverizing and repaving the entire thing. Maybe we can still mill and overlay and catch it, before it goes too far. But no.
But it's apparent to me that I can remember in years past riding down Bryn Mawr Street after it might have been redone. And I went many a times before I noticed a pothole. All you have to do is get a street redone and just give it a year. I mean, you don't even have to question whether it's right. You can see it if you're driving on the roads. There are roads that are main roads that take you from one community to another, that all of a sudden, if you get on the road and you're commuting and you go through to Hopkinton and you see a newly paved road, and you use that because that's where you're going to work, I can assure you within a year or two, if you're still going to your job and you use that road, you're going to see damage done to that road. It's just a given. There's so much construction out there.
Does the funding for the roads come out of the general fund, or is that mostly from the state?
Say that again, Steve?
Is the funding for the road repairs, is that coming basically out of the general fund, or is that really
So there's
more
there's a
state?
combination of funding. There's 535,000 that is appropriated under highway for road reconstruction, under engineer. In addition to that, we utilize our Chapter 90 funds, which is about $606,000, has been the last several years. This year, we had a supplemental Chapter 90 of $300,000. We have town road improvement, we have drainage and catch basins under stormwater, and now we have sidewalks to help us do that when we're doing some of our main roads as well. So it's a combination of things. I think in total, we have about 1.4 million to spend. But please realize, over the last couple of years, that 1.4 million doesn't go as far as it used to go because of the escalation pricing. Now, one other thing to get to your point, Patrick, to extend the life of the road, the highway is now doing crack sealing, which they didn't do in years past. So that extends the life of the road to help preserve it as best we can.
Again, to your point, the best we can, right? Sure.
And there are a lot of variables when it comes to the roads. Like I said, the subgrade material is key. If you have, if you don't have a good gravel base that, water can't get through, it's just going to get trapped. And you might see, I know that there's other towns that are looking at newer technologies of microsurfacing, and there's a whole range of things that you can do with asphalt. We've just been a little bit more cautious. I've been watching the other towns and seeing the asphalt kind of peel up after a year. So I've been seeing that as well. So there's a combination of things.
So I've got a couple questions. One, Joanna, can you just explain, there is a plan, an X number of year plan to resurface all town roadways. So if people aren't on this year's list, there is plans for next year. And my question for the CFO and town manager is, we just talked about sidewalks, putting them into the CIP to allow for the flexibility to roll over, because even though the roadways, we have, how many miles we attempt to do a year? It's,
We tried to do 4.
that seems like a big number, but when these asphalt contractors are going, when they can get a contract to do 290, that's their priority. So we end up at the end of the season, and then you're at the will of when the asphalt plants are going to close, if it's a cold, cold fall. So why are we not, for the bigger numbers, also having that as a CIP, a capital number, where we'd have a little more flexibility between fiscal years?
Because what we do is we focus on spending that 535 first. And because we can carry over Chapter 90.
Chapter 90 can.
So, the value of the road reconstruction work we do on an annual basis absorbs all of the funding sources that we identified. But if the timing is such where we can't spend it by June 30th, we're going to spend the 535 first and then rely on the other supplemental funding.
Yeah, the timing makes it a little bit difficult just because you have, the state budget and the town budget comes out in the middle of construction season. So, so by the time that we are guaranteed that money and we can award that contract, we're way into that construction season. So we've kind of come upon that most years, but.
You have some pretty good relationships with some of those companies that have done, and you assess their work, again, to the quality. If the company that they didn't hold up the way you thought it would, they certainly wouldn't be on your list for the following year.
So we do have to go through a bidding process, but in probably about, might have been 4 or 5 years ago, we started putting a clause to give us the option to extend the contract for additional 2 years. So it's a three-year contract, if we want to. So that's up to our discretion. But so that gives us a little bit more flexibility.
So the contract is a per mile rate or something like that, or?
No, it's actually a line item. So so the contract is based on the value of the first contract. So we'll go through, and once we pick the road, we'll walk the road to see which, and it's itemized. So we'll have a quantity for excavation, a quantity for hot mix for asphalt. We'll have a quantity for sidewalk asphalt or driveway asphalt. It's all separated out. So that gives us an estimate of the work for that year. And then we're allowed to extend that contract and we go by that value for the next year.
Any other questions relative to highway and roads?
No, I mean, I'd like to ask questions, but it's all driven by product and payroll, so it is what it is.
Okay, facility management.
So the facility management, like Ed said, that we have the position was moved from highway to this section, just because we recognize the fact that the person that was filling the position was doing much more than just being a carpenter, estimator. He was managing these projects. So that was basically the position kind of, evolved over the years into something much more than just, somebody that's just, hammering, a nail into the wall. So, that was, to recognize that, it was moved into the manager position was moved to the facility section.
And this is relatively new, facilities as a sort of a carve-away section, right? And it can, and maybe just some historical for the new members, the value that this
Oh,
department
I couldn't put, the value is huge.
well exceeds the number that's.
Oh, my God, yeah. So just to identify some of the projects that's been done, the field house or the press box down at the high school was done. He's done work in creating new office space here on the second floor. He totally, the facility's totally rehabbed the Merriam Building where I reside, that whole thing. The reconstruction and rehab of Camp Gleason was totally done by facilities. The salt shed, the brand new salt shed, the new facilities workshop down at DPW, new office space, rehab of office space down at DPW. He's helped the schools out. He's been, he's done work in every public building that we have, and he's going to be sorely missed. He's saved the town a lot of money.
And I have to say, I leave before 7 in the morning, and I think that, I see that truck every morning is out before 7 on their way to some destination. So they're not lingering around the yard. It seems like they're right out to whatever their assignment is for the day, and, the work is,
They rehabbed the 4 restrooms, 2 here, 2 downstairs, totally gutted them and rebuilt them. I mean,
cost to contract that out would have
oh,
been.
it's huge, huge money.
Questions relative to facilities? Fleet maintenance.
Okay, so this is, so the wages kind of stayed the same, but we, in recognition of our discussions last year, to make it a little bit easier to follow, because facilities, supports more than just DPW, we split the repairs by, DPW, fire, police, town hall, and then, general, maintenance supply. So we split up the the estimated value of the work, according to the department that it supports. And then in addition to that, we also have a software support, which will pay for the yearly cost of the software to track these work orders, the cost, the inventory, and whatever work orders that's put in by the other departments.
Questions on fleet?
Just on this software support, just wondering why it's not something that would fall under IT?
I think because it's just specialized to our department.
It's special for
Yeah,
you,
it's
but
a-
is RRT?
It's a fleet tracking,
Right, but RRT person has no, it's not going to even be supported by them.
No.
You'll never need them. They don't need to be involved.
No, they have special, I mean, the support comes with the
Right, so
license.
is there a one-time support cost already included in this 15 that down the road will have to get renewed?
So there's a yearly fee of the $15,000.
Oh, so this isn't even initiating the software support. This is the first contract price.
So we've already paid into the product. We have it, it's already in place. And this is just. the
So this
funding for
is,
next year.
this
it was
is-
embedded under the repair line item. It just carved out to show it as a separate
Sure.
cost.
Okay. And that's about what we can expect currently going forward, is at least 15,000 or a contractual increase for support only. Okay. Okay, so it's existing software support. Okay. Thank you.
Question relative to why we account for, and I think this was relative to collective bargaining, why we account for the mechanics, it appears in the highway division as opposed to in the fleet maintenance division. So the only salaries really there is the clerical and some stipends, it appears, under wages and not the full-time mechanics. Can you explain why that is, or?
So the full-time mechanics are still in the departments that they had resided in, and then they get a differential for the work that they do.
New mechanics that come on, would they, in the future, appear solely in the fleet division? So that at some point we can have a true
One
account?
was assigned to the fire department, and it's budgeted under the fire department.
Yes.
The others remained in highway, and there was one in sewer department. The sewer was reassigned to fire.
I see there was one, I see under highway, there's one open position for,
Yeah, there's one left in sewer, right.
one open fleet mechanic, one, and it appears to be does that, would that eventually be put under fleet maintenance?
We're currently under discussions with two bargaining groups to reorganize the positions under fleet maintenance, so I can't get into the specifics about that, but there will be some changes coming down the road.
I know people came from different assignments into those
We
mechanics.
want it under one umbrella. That's
Be able to see a
for
true cost
accountability,
for,
efficiency, yes.
true cost of what it costs to operate our fleet. Okay, thank you. The repairs cost that that's parts included, parts, is that all parts? Because the salaries are not listed here, but
Right, so the repair costs that are listed here are an estimate, but they do include, they're based on the trends over the past, the past few years, especially this year. So they would include any, whatever we had, whatever we had paid out to send vehicles out, if we weren't able to fix them.
So that's parts and subcontracting, or is that?
Yes.
Questions relative to fleet? Parks Department?
So the only increase that we have here is the Veterans Memorial. The Veterans Memorial Corridor, I think it was built, I want to say close to 15 years ago, and it's just, it's getting a little bit older, so it needs a little bit more maintenance than in previous years. The trees are overgrowing, so we need to trim out the trees, maybe replace some, as well as some lighting upgrades.
Questions on parks? I noticed you made a request for $15,000 for seasonal employees. Was that based on a need, or?
We're going to fund that through the revolving accounts, the seasonal aspect.
Oh, thank you. Additional questions on this one? The golf course.
Okay, so we're looking at some changes. I guess first of all, there's the biggest part would be in the wages account in the seasonal employees. We're looking to increase the number of seasonal employees. Currently, we only have one person working at the clubhouse, checking anybody in, letting people out. It's making it difficult to really monitor anything outside, so we want to have a ranger outside. And that's also based on a survey that the clubhouse manager had done. The speed of play was a concern for a lot of people. So the speed of play.
Speed of play. George, you can attest to that?
Yeah, I agree.
So to have somebody out there and kind of remind people to move along, not, to kind of limit the number of, the time that they take at HT. So we're looking to have somebody out there once, in addition to, speeding up the play, possibly allowing, maybe selling water, that type of thing. Because, it might get a little bit hot, once they get out there, it's kind of difficult to come back. So, so we're increasing the staff. So you're gonna see that huge jump for the seasonal employees and the grounds.
Yeah, I remember one time last year, my wife's cousin and I got through 4 holes and we just left because it was so bad. So it's probably a very good idea. Keep people happy, keep them coming back, so, yep.
That's our intent.
So that would be my question. Can you just, in overall, how successful last year was, and explain that Packagug has a revolving account for? Enterprise account. I knew I'd get it wrong. I tried.
So I think they eclipsed 800,000 in revenue last year, is that?
I know that calendar year was definitely.
800,000, so certainly that built up the retained earnings in the enterprise. So this level of expense can be supported by the revenue coming in, and I know they had an increase in some fees, right?
Yes, we increased the seasonal passes last year.
So all things being equal, if we have the same level of activity, we should see something in excess of 800,000 once again. So, the golf course has done very well. It's managed very well. And so, That's good news, because I remember when we first went to this concept, it was being questioned by town meeting. And it's been very successful ever since we took over the golf course.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but, accolades for the conditions of the course. Unfortunately, a little bit of the slow play, maybe that can be resolved, but if you're out to Georgia, I mean, it's,
Yeah, it's always nice and green and
So, well, just to let you know, a future consideration that we're having discussions now is we had an engineering study done for irrigation and drainage. So we're looking to come up with a value for that, and then maybe take out a bond issue for a 10-year period of time that would be covered through the revenue coming in. It was too aggressive to get on to the annual town meeting, so we'll be having discussions about that. We may bring something in at the fall, if not the next annual town meeting. So we want to continue to improve the asset that we have. Otherwise, we're going to lose, that asset will deteriorate if we don't make an investment in the golf course.
we did something with carts recently too, didn't we?
We just received our 6 additional carts today, so.
Today? See, those are the things you got to report. People are excited to hear that stuff. There's new carts up there too, George. All right. Any other questions relative to?
So please golf and help us enhance
Well, I
our
don't know,
revenue.
I might get thrown off because I like to relax and enjoy, if I don't get if I don't do like the pros and get my tee shot off in 30 seconds, I'm going to have someone up my butt.
It's okay. You just got to step aside, let George play through, and then you can get right back in.
Exactly. I've had a fellow peer play through any time.
Okay, recreation.
So that was the,
So as you can see, those 3 line items are the ones we removed in an effort to balance the budget. So this is a priority. This is something that we may come back before the annual town meeting and ask you to reconsider the values of this. But we're trying to look at other ways of funding this if possible. So we need a little more time.
Sounds like.
Unless you want to build it in now in hopes of, it's going to put the budget out of balance, but we are hopeful that our new growth may come in stronger than what we have estimated.
Sounds like a job for our economic coordinator to reach out to our business community to support the people.
Unfortunately, the permits drive the value that we capture. That's still ongoing, so,
'Cause I think we've already, a bigger portion of those events is already in like the public safety and stuff. We've approved those.
right, so in addition to that, we have special detail costs. Not even special detail, because those events are covered through their portion of the budget, not through a detail rate.
So there are costs that we've already
Right, yes.
recommended. So I don't want the public to think that we're sort of, these events are not going to happen. I think it's just at the moment,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to phrase that one.
Listen, I wouldn't be opposed to someone making a recommendation to reinstate those for the values that they've been requested at.
I'll make a motion to reinstate them.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to reinstate the lines of special events, Memorial Day, and the 4th of July. Motion and second, all in favor? All right. Okay.
I'll be ready when we get there.
Sacrifice some of the money on the finance committee budget too.
No more pizza.
Cupcakes are definitely out this year.
what's the pizza bin?
You gonna give me the bottom line number when we get there?
When we get there, I'll have that for you.
Thank you. No other questions on recreation, correct?
And just for the record, I'm doing that specifically to send a message to the people in the town that if they don't understand, that's not missing, and later they're not wondering what's going on. So I did it for the taxpayers.
I agree. I don't think we should cast any doubt that those events, which are well received, well attended, they're great events to bring family and yeah, I would not want to see we'll go back with sharper pencils and find other places to trim before we let those events go away. Cemetery.
So, so there's some slight increased cost of materials as well as, we included an education, account because we never had anything, budgeted for that. So, we reduced the dues publications account, but then added, funded a new education account.
Any questions on cemetery? It's another complicated one. Sewer division.
So, so in this one, the majority of the increases are due to utilities and supplies. And then we have a 3% increase in our Upper Blackstone assessment.
Can you just explain that, the Upper Blackstone again? How often do we get reassessed for?
So that's assessed on their budget, and the assessment is based on a 3-year average flow. So our share of the flow to the Upper Blackstone, and that gets assessed yearly.
Questions on sewer? Sewer infrastructure, is that in, do we have CIP stuff in there? Because we've had some stuff over the last, big stuff, right, over the last few years with Upland and a couple other places, the connectors, those were projects, but emergency stuff, I think we had, was it up? Was
We
it?
had 2 emergency repairs that we actually raised on the recap sheet as a revenue deficit, so, with DOR approval.
Any questions on sewer? That's it?
Mr. Chairman, that new grand total is $7,322,012.
Sorry, can you read it one more time, sir?
$7,322,012.
Okay, so FY '24, it was $6,995,780. This year, the department's request was $7,536,715. With our adjustment, the recommendation would be $7,322,012.
Motion to recommend. Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend. All in favor? Okay, very good. Thank you. And CIP, do we have stuff on this year's? I assume we would. Looks like fleet maintenance, you have one for this year?
Okay.
For this year's CIP? So fleet maintenance, is that the first one you have? Anything else that you wanted, to point out?
So for fleet maintenance, we just have the garage improvements, our ongoing efforts to make it a little bit more efficient and do what we can with our existing space.
To be OSHA compliant, too.
Is there a point with that building that the cost benefit isn't a new Butler building of some sort and replace that as opposed to trying to cobble that back together into a workable space? I haven't been down to see what the building looks like, but it just, 60,000 a year over, a few years, do we get to a point where we would have been better just
I think we've made some major improvements. I think Joanna will tell you the same internally. There are some additional, repairs that need to be done. For instance, the roof that we have programmed in the capital. We made some major rehab and investment in the kennel. So I think to wipe that out would be, after we spent some significant amount of money, would be not a good decision to make. So certainly, I think that has to be a consideration in the future. I think, that is one of our facilities that really needs improvement in updating, but we're not there yet. We have too many other things that are under consideration at this point.
I was just I wasn't recommending taking this off or stopping the direction we're going, just as considerations go, sometimes with these.
No, you made a good point. Certainly, those items outlined once again are current lease obligations that are funded through tax levy. I think we indicated that when we presented the capital.
Were there any, I guess, for this committee, were there any decisions or things that were pushed, either adjustments made or things that were pushed out to another fiscal year?
Yes, there wasn't, if you look under highway, you'll see the $100,000 for sidewalk pedestrian safety funded through bond proceeds. That was not recommended originally in '25. That's the one we reprogrammed from the DPW operational side of the budget to CIP. I think we already reflected the increased cost in some of our vehicles last year when we made some amendments. So we feel as though those values, actually, there was one six-wheel dump at 60,000, we amended to 95,000. And our six-wheel dump that we purchased most recently, from 65 to 78, that reflects the increase in cost as well.
Any questions on the CIP relative to DPW? I think that's all we have relative to the budgets. Joanna, thank you very much for your time and information. We did your transfer already. We did not have any up to 250s, right? So, and unless there's any questions on the minutes, we will just take those as presented to us here. So for next week, April 3rd, we've got Bay Path, Norfolk Aggie, General Services, Reserve, Pensions, Benefits, and Youth Commission. And will we have the warrant to vote on as well as the CIP? Everybody, does next Wednesday still work for everybody? Yep. Okay. 5:30 again, yeah, that seems to be, I know we're coming in on two wheels, most of us, but we make it happen. If we get a few minutes' notice you're gonna be late, we can always pump the brakes on cable television from home live, so. Anything else? Any other, do a motion to adjourn if nobody has anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we're adjourned.